Today on Aging Untold, drug and alcohol addiction can be a struggle at any stage of life, and it remains a serious battle for many seniors.
Addiction can explain a bad behavior, but it's never going to excuse it.
We'll talk about the pitfalls of addiction and why it can be especially challenging for caregivers supporting those at risk. Then, from first loves to life lessons, older adults hold memories we can't replace.
Everyone deserves to have their story heard.
How you can unlock those unforgettable stories and save them for a lifetime. Also, a Dog's Day.
There's just this unconditional love and warmth that dogs provide you, that no matter what, you know that they're always there.
How this trio is inspiring the 3 Ps: pets, pats, and purpose. Experts with advice and solutions. You're watching Aging Untold with Aging Well Coach Catherine Ambrose, gerontologist Sam Craddock, aging expert Amy O'Rourke, and board-certified physician Dr. Ray Rogers. We're all getting older. It's about time we talked about it.
Welcome to Aging Untold. Drug and alcohol interventions are tough, especially when the struggle has been building for decades. Dr. Ray, when drug and alcohol use increases in adults over 60, what are the biggest health risks that we should know?
Well, I think people need to realize that addiction looks different in older adults and in people with cognitive decline than it does in just your general population where they have cravings. When you have cognitive decline and you're older, it tends to start off with prescriptions, and then a lot of times they'll progress into the alcohol and things like that. And the brain, as we age, it loses its sensitivity. Your processing speed is a lot slower, and you don't clear substances out of your system as quick as you did before. So things tend to start building up because they're lingering around. So you'll have medications, you're drinking, and many times people will forget they had the medications because they get memory loss in that, or they get kind of disoriented, and falls tend to occur more. So it's a whole different spectrum than what we're used to in the general population, I would say.
And I think the addiction itself causes harm for the caregiver. And that's the hardest part, because there's so much guilt of, they're old, I can't abandon them. If I leave, who's going to take care of them? And I have to always say, addiction can explain a bad behavior, but it's never going to excuse it. And you don't have to be that person's punching bag. They've made a choice, and you have to make the choice to protect yourself. And unfortunately, you've seen it, Amy, where in communities, they don't want to accept somebody in that's actively seeking drugs or seeking alcohol and dealing with addiction issues. So we're kind of in that rock and hard place.
Well, it reminds me of a woman who had to be moved into a community, older, alcoholic, tired daughter, just tired. And I think she thought she was going to move her into the community and then we were going to handle her. And what happened was, the grace of someone, she forgot she drank.
Oh.
Her memory, she forgot she drank. Interestingly enough, metabolically, she put 20 packs of sugar on her eggs.
Oh.
So her body was still craving it. But I think the point for me is I've worked with a lot of people that are trying to find a home for their older adult, and they're alcoholic, they have no intention of quitting, and what do? So I've known some lenient administrators that'll work with it and others who won't. So I just think having that practical conversation with them and to say, this is a problem, it's not going to change much, are you willing to take them?
Unless they forget they drink.
Unless they forget they drink.
And
I know.
I think it has to do with what their behavior is. There are some happy drunks. I mean, there really are. There are some that aren't abusive. They're not hostile. They're not combative. And you can tolerate that. The family can tolerate that. They've obviously been dealing with it for years and years. But if that hostility comes in, if that abuse is part of it, then sometimes you have to kind of walk away and hope and pray that they get the help they need. And I understand that as well.
I'm glad you said that, because there are people that they're just happy, they're doing fine, they're doing fine. But there's the thing as safety before loyalty. If it is causing challenges like falls and accelerated risk, then it might be time to address it. But sometimes people are picked on just because they don't like the behavior.
I've been an administrator in a community. Some of the strategies that we've used for the alcoholic where it's really kind of going to get bad, we've tried to dilute the alcohol.
Yeah.
We've tried to manage other people, like get the lady next door that keeps sneaking in the bottle, hey, please don't do that, you know, or buy a smaller bottle, you know, just to get creative with managing it. I've known people that have gone to rehabilitation at age 80, age 82, so I don't take that off the table for someone.
Sure.
But I think you really have to kind of widen your risk tolerance in working with an older alcoholic that has no intention of quitting.
And then the other thing that happens when you're using alcohol, you're older, it actually worsens the disease, you know, so you'll have more inflammation and disruption and that, and so they go downhill kind of quickly.
And if anybody's out there, my biggest thing that I would tell them is ask for help. Yes. This is a really complicated issue that those of us who've been in the industry for a very long time, it's complicated and you can't do it alone.
Still to come, she watched her sister's life-changing weight loss journey.
I saw how happy she was and how she was coming out of her shell. She was being more social.
But little did they know, solving one problem would lead to another devastating development. Up next, your family's greatest treasures aren't always in a bank account.
Put it in a recording so that they can listen to you share that information.
They're also in the stories you share. We discuss ways to capture decades of wisdom and history before it's too late.
There's a lot we may lose when older loved ones pass away. Among them are their life stories and historical perspectives. That's why making the most of the time we have with those relatives while they're still here can benefit future generations. Sam, what do you think happens when we miss the opportunities to gather these stories?
Oh my gosh. I have always called our elderly the living, breathing history books of society. And you just can't wait till after that funeral to realize that you didn't take the time to listen to the stories. Because when one of those elderly pass without being read, we're not losing just a person, we're losing a library of stories. And you know, we're already at an odds because we've traveled so far away from our families and people live so far apart that you see a loss of empathy and connection with our older community. You know, every caregiver I ever hire, I usually their basis comes back to taking care of their grandparents or being around their grandparents and loving them. And so listening to those stories and learning your family history, learning where you're from is so vitally important to truly just being a good human being, I think.
You know what I found myself missing when I lost my mom was her voice, the sound of her voice. And I think if I could have just had a tape recorder, if I'd had the presence of mind to do that and listen to her history, she wrote everything down and we have pictures, but somehow the voice was missing. The other thing I thought about was my niece and nephew gave my sister a Christmas present, and that Christmas present was 50 questions that they wanted her to answer. And it was emotional memories and history. And I'm gonna go today and say, you've written all the answers down, but put it in a recording.
Yes.
So that they can listen to you share that information.
There's a lot of regret that people have, especially as they age, thinking about maybe how they treated their parents or they didn't gather enough information. And so just understand this, that if you feel your family's not listening to you, that you can document your life story in different ways, even in writing it on little notes, like write a little something and put it into a memory jar. There's all different things that you can do. Just add little memories or your favorite sayings so they can look at that later and gift it to them at Christmas.
Well, how many times do you, I'd find it's like, man, I wish I remember that recipe, how my mom used to make.
Absolutely.
How many
we're like,
times?
do you remember how Aunt Jean did the chili? Because I don't.
My mom was like the historian of the family. She wasn't just the historian of the family, she was the historian of the town. So she knew all the ins and outs and who was married to who and whose kid was whose. And so my mom wouldn't record things. I bought her recorders, I tried everything. So when she was diagnosed and I knew she was terminal, every voicemail, and I would intentionally not answer so she would leave voicemails. So I saved them.
And then include your kids. Share memories of when they were babies and what they did so that they can share it with their children, or maybe see similarities in their children to how they were as children.
Still ahead.
You all right if we come in and make a visit?
Frankie boy, you behaving yourself?
He is.
We go to work with the pups of Paw Patrol and show you how they inspire moments of comfort and joy for veterans. After the break, swapping one addiction for another. We explore a potential side effect from a popular surgery that one woman says led to her sister's death. Find more Aging Untold content on your favorite social platform. You can follow Aging Untold on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok now.
For people with severe obesity who've tried everything to lose weight, bariatric surgery can be life-changing. But this weight loss procedure comes with a hidden risk that some doctors don't talk about: transfer addiction. This happens when patients trade their food addiction for another compulsive behavior, like alcohol, drugs, or gambling. Reporter Kristen Crowley uncovers why some in the medical field are hesitant to talk about this risk and speaks with patients working to bring awareness to it.
Sisters often share a special bond.
She was funny, she was charismatic.
That was certainly true for Amanda and Carrie, who not only considered themselves best friends, they also lived next door to each other and traveled the world together.
Hawaii for her 40th birthday. We went to like Key West in Mexico. We did a med cruise out of Rome to like four Greek Isle stops.
But for Amanda, the most impactful journey was one she never expected: Carrie's weight loss journey after bariatric surgery.
I saw how happy she was and how she was coming out of her shell. She was being more social.
So the surgery seemed successful.
Yeah, totally successful.
Did exactly what it was intended to do.
Yeah.
But it came with an unintended consequence.
At some point, after about 2 years, I started noticing her drinking more, or the drinking, her just being 2 drinks and so incredibly drunk.
Your sister's drinking habits before the surgery.
Mm-hmm.
How often was she consuming alcohol?
6 times or less a year.
She was not an alcoholic.
No.
After surgery, it was a different story. Amanda says Carrie drank regularly. She believes it was all related to a little-known potential side effect called transfer addiction. The Obesity Action Coalition says transfer addiction happens when patients with compulsive eating habits swap food for other things like alcohol, drugs, gambling, sex, even shopping. It says studies show as many as 30% of bariatric surgery patients experience it. Dr. Ann Rogers is president of the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, which works with MBS-AQIP. Dr. Rogers says one reason transfer addiction isn't mandatory to teach is there's not enough research to show it even exists.
It's very hard to study in humans. We don't even know if there's such a thing as food addiction per se. So while you can go without cigarettes or alcohol, you can't go without food. So we can't study what it's like to have people quit eating cold turkey. So that just makes it impossible to study it as a form of addiction.
But the effects of alcohol on people post-weight loss surgery are well known.
You very quickly can get intoxicated as well as dehydrated and malnourished. So we do say, after surgery, we strongly encourage no alcohol use for 12 to 24 months at all.
Dr. Jessica Hamilton is a clinical psychologist who evaluates patients before weight loss surgery. While she doesn't specifically talk to patients about transfer addiction, she does talk to them about the risk of alcohol use disorder.
Was this the last trip you took?
Mm-hmm.
Amanda says she tried desperately to get her sister help.
How many times did she go to rehab?
1, 2, 4.
Carrie was about to go back to rehab for a 5th time when she was found unresponsive on her kitchen floor. She died in November of 2018. The cause of death, alcohol poisoning.
What do you think when you hear that it's not mandatory for doctors or surgeons to tell people about the possibility of transfer addiction?
I would tell them they can have my grief, and they can have my pain, and they can have my anger.
Wow, they can have my grief and pain.
Yeah,
Powerful.
Wasn't that powerful?
Very powerful. I think one of the biggest things, we're taught as physicians, do no harm. And just because something is not, that you can't prove it medically, if you've seen it several times, it is your obligation to just put it out there and say, you might want to look out. I've seen this. It doesn't mean that, it's going to happen, but you don't know what you don't know, and you can't look for something if you don't know about it.
Right. I think it's foolish to think that you wouldn't trade one addiction for another. We all do.
We do it all the time.
We do it all the time. You might trade a bad addiction for a good one. Working out can be an addiction.
To me, if you go from one weight to another weight, if I think about myself, I would have significant emotional things to process, whether it goes to addiction or not. If I'd changed that significantly, if I got in a wreck and my face was damaged, I'd have to get counseling to say, these are feelings that I've had as a result of the accident.
But many people, when they have the surgery, that's what they're expecting. They're expecting the weight loss. But they go through all these different psychological testing and all these different things. And just like she said, you can't prove addiction for food exists because you can't stop eating. However, people will tell you, I have food noise. I have food, it's talking to me. I gotta eat. I mean, that's what you see with these GLP-1s. It calms the food noise. So you don't have to take something away to say that the addiction is not there.
Of course, we're assuming that there would be a physician really involved to ask questions, and sometimes with the GLP-1s, there's not a lot of questions asked. You're dealing maybe with a nurse practitioner, long distance, and people just get started on them. And hopefully what they experience is just joy, but people should be aware that you might deal with some rather difficult things.
From urgent care to TLC.
When we get in the car and as soon as the flag bandanas come out, they know they're going to be doing visits because that's the only time they wear them. And they just get so excited, and they know where we turn to go to the facilities, and they just start jumping around.
Up next, we go on the Paw Patrol with 3 perfectly imperfect pups and show you how they inspire joy to those they visit.
Nearly half of all veterans are now 65 and older, and these heroes are more likely to experience chronic medical conditions, mental health issues, and social isolation. A nonprofit called Heroes Bridge in Virginia helps many elderly veterans enjoy a better quality of life. Deborah Alfarone shows us how 3 imperfect pups thank them for their service.
Sorry if we come in and make a visit?
Frankie boy, you behaving yourself?
He is.
If you want to make an elderly person smile, just visit. Bring Frank, Rosa, and Lily with you.
That's a good dog.
There's just this unconditional love and warmth that dogs provide you, that no matter what, you know that they're always there.
Meet Carolyn and JD, the couple volunteers for Heroes Bridge, a nonprofit dedicated to helping elderly veterans.
Come on, buddy. Here.
They bring their 3 service dogs to visit assisted living facilities and rehabilitation centers in Virginia. The program is called Paw Patrol.
Oh, it's always nice to have company.
First stop, a visit with Larry. He served in the Korean War. He and his late wife used to own dogs.
My wife and I were together for more than 60 years. And so it's tough to let her go.
A lot of these veterans, they used to have dogs, and it brings them, joy to see and remember.
These veterans face different battles now, from medical to social isolation.
Good dog.
These pups have struggles too. Rosa's 2 front legs were broken, the right one catastrophically.
Rosa doesn't know any different. She just runs and plays and loves people.
Lily was rescued from a hoarding situation.
She's missing her 2 back paws.
And Frank is a medically retired bomb-sniffing dog.
He had wounds to his back right leg and his tail that required an amputation of both.
Carolyn is a veterinarian and JD a veteran.
When we get in the car and as soon as the flag bandanas come out, they know they're going to be doing visits because that's the only time they wear them. And they just get so excited, and they know where we turn to go to the facilities, and they just start jumping around.
Dog.
And then it's time to see Richard and Linda.
I don't know what it is, but they're a friend. They really are.
It's nice to have friends visit.
Yes.
People that are in these facilities may not have a lot of moments of joy. And if we can bring them 1, at least, or 3, at that time, then that's all that matters.
I loved that story.
Oh,
dogs are just the best, and God bless those people for making those 3 dogs available to those people in the community.
And saving the dogs. God bless them for saving the dogs. All 3 of them are rescues, and
they have trauma themselves.
Yeah.
And look how happy the dogs are when they get their little scarf on. I'm not even a dog lover, and I might reconsider.
Oh, yeah.
They're just the best.
Did you notice the big guy had a GoPro on him?
Yeah.
He had a GoPro on his back.
I tell you, I love dogs. I have 2 of them. I'd have 10 if I could get away with it. My husband would not let me do that. But if I'm older and I'm in a wheelchair and there aren't dogs around, shame on anybody that knows me.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Please bring me dogs. We're all getting older, and it's about time we talked about it. We'll see you next time on Aging Untold.
On the next Aging Untold, it's important who and how your aging loved one is cared for.
I've owned a home care agency for years, but I worked as a private caregiver, so I've seen both sides of this coin.
We break down private care versus agency care and explain the differences so you can make the right choice for your family.